So hello and welcome to the fifth webinar in the Power Tools series. I'm Kinkini Banerjee, the Coalition's Relations Manager at USBC, and this new series, Power Tools series, is organized as USBC's training, technical assistance, and capacity building support for the network of state, territorial, tribal, and community breastfeeding coalitions across the US. This webinar series is held on odd-numbered months. And access to these webinars is free and open to any breastfeeding advocate, coalition member, leader, and anyone interested in forming a nonprofit organization in the breastfeeding field. And you can sign up for our e-list at usbreastfeeding.org/sign-up to get all the announcements. And all the webinar registrations, handouts, and archives from previous webinar series are found on our Power Tools webpage, which is www.usbreastfeeding.org/powertools. I'll go over some quick logistics. For today's session, all attendees are in listen-only mode, and we encourage you to submit your questions at any time. We'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A at the end of the presentation. So you can type your questions during the session, and I will pass them on to our presenter during the Q&A session. So here's how you do it. On the right side of your screen, you should see a control panel. If you don't, it might be minimized. Just click on the orange arrow tab and it'll pop right back up. And if you scroll down, under the audio section is the section for questions, and type your questions in the box and I will pass them on. During today's session, if you experience audio problems or any other technical issues, just email office@breastfeeding.org and someone should be able to help you. And that brings me to today's topic, grant-seeking basics. Breastfeeding coalitions are vehicles of change, utilizing the passion and expertise of volunteer members to make a difference in the landscape of breastfeeding support, protection, and promotion. However, we know this, and we hear from you every day about how your coalition would be able to have a much larger impact if you had more means to invest in coalition infrastructure, to hire full-time staff, build a robust multi-sector membership, and develop quality comprehensive initiatives. Lack of adequate funding is one of the biggest challenges facing coalitions and keeping us from utilizing our full potential. More and more of you are actively exploring strategies to build new relationships with partners and funders and build a more sustainable organization. I am thrilled to have Kim Patton present this session today. Ms. Patton is responsible for creating, managing, and delivering training programs for the Foundation Center geared towards developing and expanding the leadership capacity of nonprofit organizations, both domestically and internationally. Prior to joining the Foundation Center in 2007, Kim worked as a nonprofit director, fundraiser, grant maker for over 20 years with organizations such as the Hawaii Public Television, the Council on Foundations, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Kim has a law degree from Capital University in Columbus, Ohio, and a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Cincinnati. And we are so thrilled to have Kim with us today. She'll be helping us learn what are the best initial first steps. What do we need to have in place before we go seeking a grant? What are funders looking for? And she will be sharing a wealth of resources with us on how to find them. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kim. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much, Kinkini. It'll take us just a few minutes to kind of switch over, but I am going to do that right now. From beginning, and we are almost there. And ta-da, I think you all can see it. Can everybody see my PowerPoint now?
Yes, we do, Kim.
Very good. So I am so pleased to be with you all today. I have presented for your group in the past, in person though, so this is the first time I've done it as a webinar, so this should be nice too. That way you don't have to leave the comfort of your home or office to come where I am. But I did get to meet a lot of you all when I was there last year or the year before, I don't remember, but it was a very lovely group of women. We really bonded and connected, and so I am pleased to be with you again today. I'm going to be talking to you about grant seeking basics. Feel free to type in your questions at any time. We will take them at the end, but as you're thinking about it, type it in, and we'll definitely get all the questions. Even if we have to stay on past 2:30, that's perfectly fine with me. I am from the Foundation Center, as Ken Kinney mentioned, and our mission is to strengthen the social sector by advancing knowledge about philanthropy in the U.S. and around the world. We do a lot of things to fulfill our mission. We collect, organize, and communicate information on U.S. philanthropy. We also research and report on trends in the field of philanthropy, both domestically and internationally. We do a lot of trainings such as these, including grant seeking, proposal writing, and a lot of nonprofit management courses. And we make sure that everybody can access all of this great information through vehicles such as webinars and things of this nature. We are most known for our database called Foundation Directory Online, and it is the largest, most comprehensive database in the world. We have over 130,000 grant makers in there and over 3 million grants that you can do customized searches on to support your specific projects, programs, or organizations. And I am going to demo that to you at the end of this webinar. So what we're going to cover today is what you need to have in place before you seek a grant. This is sort of a precursor to proposal writing because there's a lot of things that you need to think about, be aware of before you actually sit down and write a proposal to a potential grant maker. So we'll talk about what are some of the things that you need to know about grant makers and how nonprofits are supported, how you go about identifying funding partners, and also how you can make those first steps with building relationships with foundations and potential funders. So building a credible nonprofit organization is a really important part of this. And it really talks about, what funders are specifically looking for in successful nonprofit organizations. Most foundations, so we call that establishing your case for support. So everybody has to do that no matter what. And in this very competitive world of grant making, it's not easy to get a grant. I'm going to tell you that up front. But if you have the right things in place, that'll certainly better your chances. So you have to overall communicate to a funder why your organization not only needs the money, but it merits philanthropic grant support. And so what we mean about that is all nonprofits have very valuable purposes and needs and missions. I jokingly say in some of my in-person classes that whenever you approach a foundation, guess what they know you need? Money. I can hear all of you screaming that. Money. Absolutely. So you have to base your request not on just the need, but what you also have to offer to the foundation itself. So you want to really connect them to your mission, your values, also your programs and services, your accomplishments, and what are your plans for the future. So you really want to think through, why do you need the money, and how is this going to help you to advance not only your mission, values, beliefs, but also theirs. Each funder will have their own specific things that they're going to be looking for in organizations that they care to fund, but overall, here are some basic things that almost all of them will want you to have in place. You definitely have to have your 501c3 status, which just means that most foundations give to nonprofit organizations and not to individuals. On occasion, they will give to individuals, but it's typically for artists, writers, scholarships for people going to graduate school, undergraduate school. So even if you're approaching a foundation as an individual, they want it to be connected to a specific project or program that you can describe, that you can define. So most of them want you to either have your own nonprofit organization or be associated with a nonprofit organization. So many individuals that are looking for grant support use what is called a fiscal sponsor. So a fiscal sponsor means that you're just working together with another organization that has its 501c3 in order for you to be able to write a proposal under their nonprofit status. So you could get together with a women's organization or a health organization and be a program underneath that organization's 501c3 umbrella. Artists do that in a lot of ways. So if they want to do a photo exhibition, they might partner with a gallery or a museum or a library or a school, wherever they're going to display their work, so that they're at least associated with a nonprofit organization. So it's better if you can do that. Also, you can definitely start your own. We have webinars, which I'll show you in a minute, of how to start a nonprofit if you don't already have one, but you're thinking about doing that. We have resources on definitely how to start a nonprofit, so I'll show you where that is on GrantSpace on our website when we get there. But for now, know that nonprofits are required by the IRS to give to charitable organizations for charitable purposes, and so they all the time ask for your letter of determination in many instances to make sure that you're a legal, legitimate nonprofit or you're associated with one. So it's really more for their protection than it is to yours. So keep that in mind. So once you do that, part of that is going to be to have a compelling mission. That's where you really connect to and really let people know what you're all about. And so it's really good to kind of start there so people can relate to what it is you're talking about and what it is that you're doing. So that's one of the first things that you're going to have when you're really thinking about approaching anybody funding, but especially foundations. So a compelling mission. Why should the funder care about this particular organization, this particular mission, this particular cause or purpose? And being able to really clearly define what that purpose and what the specific outcomes of it are going to be. So how many people are you going to serve, and in what ways are you going to do it? How is this going to impact not only their lives but the lives of others as well? How does this impact or enhance your community as a whole? You're also going to need a board of directors. So the board of directors really exercises oversight of the organization. And so I'm often asked, well, how many people do you need to establish an effective board? So the answer to that is typically 8 to 10. So a lot of people feel like 8 to 10 people is a good size number to have if you want an effective board. Even if you're a small organization just getting started, 8 to 10 is really a good size. So it's sort of like the Goldilocks theory of board development. It's not too big and it's not too small. Most of the time when you start a nonprofit, you need only 3 people. You need 3 incorporators and 3 directors, 3 board members. And so those 3 people can be the same. That's going to vary state to state, but as a whole, you only need 3 people, and they can be the same people. The incorporators and the board can be the same 3 people initially. But very soon after that, you want to expand beyond just the 3 people, which initially are probably going to be your mother, your sister, your spouse, your best friend, everybody, all those people that you can convince, persuade, bribe, twist arms to make them be on the board. But right after that, you want to really expand that and include people that you're going to be serving, community members, people that don't have the same last name. And that's really important in terms of establishing your credibility with a particular funder, is really your board and the size of the board, how connected your board is to the community. One thing they always want to know, I like to say, is who thinks this is a good idea besides you? And so they can tell by, how many volunteers you have, how many board members you have, how much support do you have from your community, which leads us to the next slide, which talks about high quality programs that meet a real need in the community. So that's what we're talking about here. You want to show that the services that you're providing are needed in your community, and not only needed, but people are aware of them and are taking advantage of them, utilizing your programs and services, because it doesn't matter how high quality your programs are. If nobody's utilizing them, then it's really not going to make that big of a difference. So really knowing that there is a need in your community, and talk to funders about how you are specifically addressing those needs through your programs and services. I also think that it's a good idea to do what I say is called survey the landscape, to see who else are out there providing either the same services as you or similar services as you are, or even compatible services with you are, because it's good to really know who's out there and what is going to make you different, unique, special. What are you offering to the community that no one else can offer but you and your organization? So often we call that the competitive edge. Also, it's good to maybe collaborate or partner with other similar organizations in your area. That can give you credibility while you're trying to develop your track record and history of success, which is the next thing we're going to be talking about. So oftentimes what funders want to see is that you have a track record, you have some accomplishments that you can point to, that you have been around for a while and you have developed effective programs. And so the only way they're going to tell if they're effective and high quality is if you have a track record of achieving results and accomplishments. Capable leadership really just gets back to your board, as we talked about earlier, but also your staff or your volunteers, because a lot of times nonprofits are run by volunteers. Before you have enough money to actually hire a staff person, you have a lot of volunteers. That's another reason why you want to have a board that's fully developed, at least 8 to 10 people, so you have some worker bees that are actually going to help you to get some of this work done and get some of this off the ground, up and running. So you're going to need some support. So your board is really that, and volunteers are really good to have as well. The first staff person that people usually hire when they get enough money to do so is an executive director, somebody to be in an office to handle kind of the day-to-day operations of the organization. But it's okay for it to be run by volunteers from the start. Then they also look at your organizational and financial infrastructure. So what all of that means is everything we've talked about so far is what the outside world sees about you, your programs and services, your staff, your leadership. But they also want to look at you from the inside out to see what is your internal operations look like. Do you have the right checks and balances in place? Do you have enough people in place to sort of oversee the money, how it's managed, how it's processed? So they don't want to see that there's only one person that's writing the grants, cashing the checks, spending the money, signing the checks. So you have to have some way of having some oversight other than yourself behind the scenes. So typically that's a board member if you don't have staff, but someone else who's signing off on the checks, who's looking at the way the money is being managed and spent, some checks and balances there. And that's what they mean by financial infrastructure as well. They want to know that you have a strong financial base, or that you have some support coming in already before they will want to invest in you, because a grant is an investment. It's an investment in your mission, in your organization, in the people that you serve, in the problem or need that you are trying to address or solve. and they don't want to be the sole investor. It's like any other investment you or I would make. It's a gamble if you're putting all your eggs in one basket, so you want to make sure that there are other people investing in that. So they're going to want to see that you have other funders in the mix. So the next question that's often asked is, well, how do we have other funders in the mix, right? We don't have any money, or at least we don't have enough money, or we wouldn't be looking for grant money. So here's who supports nonprofit organizations. And it might be a little surprising to you at first. It often is. So if it is, you're not the only one. You're in good company. So this is the statistics that are taken by the Urban Institute, National Center of Charitable Statistics. They do a lot of good work in the field like we do. And so they have put together sort of the sources of revenue for nonprofit public charities. And this is taken from 2010, because with stats and things like that, it always takes a few years for it to catch up. But this never really changes. It's always pretty much the same year after year after year, with maybe a tenth of a percentage up or down here or there. So what you see, I think most obvious, is that most of the money does not come from foundations. A lot of people think it does, and if you did, you're not the only one. As you can see, about 49% of it, almost half, comes from fees for services and goods from private sources. So you're like, well, what does that mean? So that really just means earned income, the way that you can earn income for yourself. So that's either fees for services that you provide. So sometimes people do like a sliding scale kind of thing. You may be able to contract some of your expertise with organizations that can afford to pay it, like hospitals, for example, or women's centers or organizations where maybe they would be willing to pay you to come in and talk about breastfeeding or the process or the benefits of it. But larger maybe organizations that might pay you to do something like that. Also goods as well, so any kind of goods that you may be able to provide. So what is your sustainable business model or your business plan? A lot of times we don't like to think of nonprofits in that way, but more and more you will find that you cannot just rely on foundations or corporations to support your work. So you have to think of what other ways can you earn income from yourself. We don't call it a profit because we're a nonprofit, so we can't make a profit, but we can earn money. And what that means, the difference between a profit and earned income, because it means about the same, but you just earned income, you have to put it towards your mission. Profit, you can do whatever you want with it. Like corporations, if they make a profit, they can go give employee bonuses, they can go on staff retreats, they can buy a jet if they want to. We have to put it back into the furtherance of our mission. So what a lot of people do is use that to pay for things that foundations might not necessarily want to pay for. Typically, foundations don't want to pay for salaries and space and, equipment, offices, and things like that, because it's just not that attractive. When they tell the story about what we've done with our grant money, how is it being invested, how are we changing communities and lives, they don't want to say that we paid somebody's rent or we paid somebody's salaries. So the more you can attach the grant to a specific program or project, the better off you're going to be, mainly because you can show the outcome or the impact or the results, who you're serving, how many people, how have you served them. So a lot of people use earned income to pay for their rent, their overhead costs, their administrative expenses, the stuff that's harder to get. I'm not saying you can't get it from foundations, it's just harder to get in some ways. So a lot of times they'll use the earned income for that. So it's just something to think about. So it could be some products that you provide in terms of breastfeeding that you can provide at maybe a lower cost than someone can buy it from the store from, or it's a particular tote bag that they can keep all their equipment in that has your name and logo on it. Lots of things like that. things that may be hard to find, that maybe you can get at a bulk rate and provide that for people at a low cost. So whatever the goods are, and they don't necessarily have to be associated exactly with what you do, but it is nice if it does kind of further your branding, your visibility, your reputation in the community, because whenever somebody carries the bag with your logo on it, for example, or wears a T-shirt that's specifically geared toward breastfeeding moms, I would love that. It's going to show your logo, your organization's name, and it's just going to be more branding or visibility for you. So just really think about that. My favorite example of earned income is Girl Scout cookies. So they make a lot of money off of those cookies. And it just started off as a bake sale in somebody's backyard. That's a true story. So it doesn't have to be on any kind of grandiose scale, but just some way of earning income for yourself. And most sustainable nonprofits have a way that they're kind of bringing in money for themselves. So it's something to really think about now and as you move forward. Some of the other areas, government grants are just that, grants from the government or public sources. Fees for services and goods from the government are like, if you had example that I like to use is like a juvenile justice program or a mentoring program, and you get money from the Department of Justice or the Department of Education to run those programs and services. Sometimes the government will contract out those services that they can't do themselves. So it could be either a straight out grant or it could be a contract that you're getting from them. As you see, a lot of that is coming from government contracts. Investment income is just if you have an endowment. Most people don't, but a lot of sustainable nonprofits do have their own endowments, and that's where you're just investing a certain amount of money and you kind of have income coming off of the interest. Other income could be membership organizations or some things like that, anything that doesn't fall into these other categories. So really thinking about a good sustainable business model for your organizations. Foundations, I think you're wondering probably now, is where do they fall into the category? You don't see them anywhere on here because they fall under private contributions, which makes up about 13% of where the money is coming from. So if we click to the next slide, you can see where that 13% is broken down. So the 13% from private contributions really are from corporations, foundations, and individuals. So you see that even here, when we're just looking at that one piece of the pie, most of the money is coming from individuals, and a lot of people are really surprised at that. And the reason being, so bequests are individuals too, because that just means when they give through their wills, trusts, and estates, and things like that. So that's added to the 72% here. So the reason being is because there are way more individuals in the world than there are foundations and corporations put together. So that's really like the real answer to that. Also, a lot of the fees for goods and services, things that you're selling, are going to be coming from individuals, right? Whenever you go to a museum or some kind of arts, a cultural event or a concert, you always end up either in their bookstore or in their gift shop because that's their earned income. They're selling those things to really support the organization behind those events and activities and performances. So who's going to be buying those things? Individuals. Corporations, a lot of times they will have direct corporate giving programs as well as foundations, so they're kind of in both categories. A lot of times they will give directly through their corporate profits on a regional basis. That's called direct corporate giving. And a lot of times they'll have a foundation as well, so you can approach them on two different levels. But that's the makeup, so you really have to be thinking about things like that as a whole. So in terms of the world of grant makers and private and foundations, looking at that piece of the pie, here we're talking about the direct corporate giving programs, which you should also look at with corporations, as we just talked about. Private foundations are the largest category of institutional grant makers, and those are the ones that are like the family foundations that you've probably heard of, Kellogg, MacArthur, Gates. That's what we mean by private foundations. They're different from corporate foundations and corporate giving programs because of the source of the money comes from individuals or a group of individuals, like family members or a group of individuals. And so the money is coming from a private source versus with corporate giving programs and corporate foundations, the money is coming from corporate profits. And then there are organizations like community foundations. They're called public charities because they raise money just like you and I do from individuals, corporations, and foundations, except that their mission is to give that money back to organizations within their specific communities through grant making. But they raise money too. All right, so going to the next slide. Private foundations we were just talking about are non-governmental, so they're not associated with the government, and they're nonprofit organizations just like you and I are. It's just that their mission is to give grants away. Instead of writing grant proposals, they have its own funds or endowment. Even if it's a corporate foundation, it has a separate funds and endowment, and it's managed by a separate group of trustees and boards of directors, and they're established to aid charitable organizations for charitable purposes in a variety of different areas. We talked about the direct corporate giving programs. A lot of times you have to research those through the sponsoring companies because they don't have to fill out 990s or 990 PS. So a 990 is what we all have to fill out, as you can see here, as nonprofit organizations. Grant-making public charities have to do the same thing. Even if they're grant-making, they have to fill out a Form 990. So you all should be doing that, or all nonprofits have to do that. It's the same for private foundations, except they just call it a 990 PF, and PF just stands for private foundation, but they have to do the same thing too. Corporate giving programs don't have to do that because they are not required. Corporations are not required to give money away to nonprofits unless they are a foundation, but they like to do it because they like to look like, and be good corporate citizens that are giving back to the community where their employees work, where their customers live, all that kind of stuff. So we were talking about the various types of grant-making public charities, community foundations being one. Community foundations, there's one in every local community just about, and it has the geographic region that the community foundation covers in its name. So the Colorado Community Foundation, the Baltimore Community Foundation, the Arizona Community Foundation. So they are really talking about the areas that they serve and represent. Those are good to know in your area because those are the ones that are going to care most about grassroots community organizations, that are doing good work within that geographic area. There are also population or issue-oriented funds, which just means there's a global fund for women, the Ms. Foundation for women. So it's focusing on a specific population, or it can focus on a specific issue like breast cancer research or something like that. There are also company-sponsored public charities like the Avon Walk for the Cure. It's company-sponsored by Avon, and they're raising money from individuals. So I'm going to demo our database, which is like the really, really fun part of all of this. If you can't hear me, let me know. But hopefully you can. Sorry about the interruptions. But anyway, I am going to click on Search Grant Makers, and this is a lovely, lovely tool that will help you do research, like we were saying, based on, who's interested in what you have to offer. And I'm looking at the Grant Maker tab right now, and I'll show you how to access all this good stuff in a minute. But for example, field of interest, you can use our View Index code, and you can find out who is funding in your particular area of interest. And there's a lot of different areas under here, so you should just kind of glance through them and see which ones most fit what it is that you all are looking for. I'm going to send Kenny a copy of our cheat sheet so you can kind of see what all of the terms are included in this. It'll be helpful to you, and she can just hand it out to you later. But I looked you all up what I thought would be kind of the most interesting categories for what it is that you're trying to do. So I'm looking under the human service areas. That's where I felt like you fit most. And we can look up family services. For example, there were some interesting things under family services, so I think we could look on that. Let's see, there was one here in particular that I thought, hold on. Family services, parent education. I thought that might be a good one for you guys, or just family services in general. And as you can see, they will connect the terms together as one single unit. You can also, let's see, women are probably in here. But that's going to be a, of course, a very broad category, but you might want to click on women centers/services. So let's try that. The type of support, if we use a view index field, you can look at program development. We talked about that. So we're going to pop that in here. You can also look for general operating support, which is to pay for your offices and your admin costs. And then there are a lot of other things in here like building or renovation, computer technology, conferences and seminars, donated equipment. So there are a lot of different types of support that you can look for from foundations. It's a handful of them. Oh yeah, and then here's seed money right here. So we'll put that in there too. So then your geographic focus is going to be where your project takes place. So that could be any city that you are in, any state that you're in, right? So you could put a specific city in there. So I'll just put DC in there. But you could also put national in there. If it's a national organization serving a lot of different communities. It might even be international, and you could put that in there as well. And that's all you really have to do to really do an effective search using our database. And if we do a search on that, it will pull up the people who are interested in your particular cause or issue. So there are 79 people that came up with that search, 79 funders, and that's pretty good. And we'll click on total giving because that'll bring up the biggest ones to the top. So you can see which ones are most interested in what you have to offer. And then if I click on one of them, it will bring up what we call a record. And it will give you all of the information you need to apply to this particular funder. It will give you their contact information, their address, their email, their website, what kind of funder it is. Remember, we talked about that. So we got, this is an independent private foundation, so it'll tell you what kind it is. And you can look at their application information. So we put it here, and it tells you what they want their initial approach to be, when are their deadlines, and how they want you to apply, what things should be included in your proposal or application, which is right here. So you always want to pay attention, let me start from the top a little bit, to any specific limitations that they might have. So they specifically tell you who they don't give grants to, so no grants to individuals, for example. And then they tell you where their giving is primarily focused on. So here, because we put DC in there, it's focused on DC, Maryland, and Virginia, of course. It also tells you a little bit about their purposes and activities, what things they care about. So here they put, they give to support programs, here's that word again, programs, in the arts and humanities, community services, education, and health. So you would probably fall most under health, perhaps, or maybe even education. Community services even. It just depends on how you want to describe yourself and what you do. And these are all the subject areas that they give to. And here's where we saw family services right there. Could also be healthcare. So thinking about that, these are the different populations that they give to, population groups. So there are more than just men, women, and children in there. But you might want to focus on, infants and toddlers. Could be another search term that you use to look for support for what it is that you are doing. And then that's good. So also they'll tell you who their officers and directors are. So it's always good to see if you have some kind of contact. You don't need a contact to get a grant, but certainly it helps. So you want to make sure that you give that list to your staff, your board, your major donors, even maybe some of your volunteers to see, or your friends, and people that you're connected to, your key stakeholders, to see if they know any of these people. And also it'll give you other affiliations. So here with Alice Rivlin, it shows that she's also a visiting professor at Georgetown University. So maybe you know somebody that went to Georgetown or is part of their alumni or something like that. It'll also give you, their list of staff members as well. Back to the initial approach, so they'll typically tell you what they want their initial approach to be. Here we said telephone, email, or full proposal. You always want to pick the thing that's most personal. So you don't want to send an email ever as sort of the initial introduction, because how many of us, read emails from people we don't know, especially when they're just trying to make the initial introduction and get to know us. Also, full proposal, you don't want to really spend your time doing a full proposal if you don't know if they're even interested. So I would pick a telephone call. But when you make the telephone call, just make sure that you've researched them thoroughly. You know exactly why you're approaching this particular funder, and make the connection immediately between what you're proposing and what the funder cares about. And this is how you know what they care about. You read through all of this stuff in detail. You can map grants, for example, to see where their money goes geographically. So you can see that most of it's been given to DC. So you could click on here and see where that money is going to specifically in the DC area. If you keep clicking down, it'll show you the list of who's getting the money and how many grants they've gotten and in what amounts here. And you can even click on this to find out more about the District of Columbia Primary Care Association to see what that grant was for and what it was all about. So they've gotten quite a few. You can sort by year authorized. So we have, the two most current grants in here, and you can click on those to see what it was for and what it was about. So it was for general operating support or continuing support, and here are some of the areas that they researched in, which are some of the areas you could use as well. So going back to the search results, you can, I'm just putting my last search and bring that up again. You can save all of this information to a flash drive. You can email it to yourself by doing this. Email, you could email the list itself, or you can email the records and you just click the boxes that you want email, or you can just click the top and it'll give you all of them. You can also export it into an Excel spreadsheet, which is kind of nice just to get you kind of started with the organization's name, their contact information, their total assets, their total giving, stuff like that. You can add other columns like deadlines and things like that. So it's a very user-friendly database, I shouldn't say thing, database that you can find, support for your specific programs or projects. You can also search grants and let me just open one more. I just wanted to show you something else before I move on. So if I click on that again, we looked at the maps. You can also look at chart grants to find out, the grants they've given in a particular subject area. So here you can see, the various subject areas that they give in, and they're not all created equally. So you have to find which one really applies to your organization and see what the funding is for your particular subject area. So I'm looking through these and seeing, so it probably was maybe health or health organizations. So if you click on health, you can see the grants that they have given in that subject area of health, and it breaks it down to specific areas. So medical care, reproductive health, so nursing care, that might be something. So let's look at reproductive health. We can see who's getting the grants and how much they're getting. So family planning is in there, so that might be something we want to look more at, or reproductive health, OBGYN and birthing centers. Let's look at that one. So if we click on that one, you can see where they've given the money to, and you can click even further to find out more about the grants for the family health and birth center. So that's chart grants. News is just where they've been in the news. Social media is just where you can follow them on Twitter and blog and things like that. Let's see, search grants. So you can search grants for this particular funder. Let's say, in here, health and DC, since they're a DC funder, do a search and it'll show you the grants that they've given to health organizations in the DC area. So this is also how you can find out, how much they've given to organizations like yours by looking through this list and really sorting by grant amount to see who's got what and how much they've given to those organizations.
Kim, if I can interrupt just for a second, this is Kim Keeney. We missed the entire section 3 of your PowerPoint. Will you be going back to that now? So that's actually kind of the meat of a lot of the work of how do I approach a foundation and, how do you build that? So we'd really like to listen to that as well.
Sure, no problem at all. So that's what we're kind of going over now. But if you want to take a look at the PowerPoint, they have the handouts, yeah?
Yes.
So right now we're talking about why do I need funding and what kind do I need, how much do I need, and when do I need the funds by. So this kind of helps you identify what kind of funding do you need and how much do you need. So really that's just about thinking through your specific program or project, thinking about what kind of support you need. So is it general operating support, program development support, seed money, and how much is it going to cost you to really develop your project, to really put on your project or program. So coming up with a budget and a proposal is what you have to have in place before you approach them. But thinking through all of those things is really important. So what are your purposes and activities? What are your goals and objectives? What are your specific outcomes? What are you trying to achieve? What is your approach? And then once you think through all of those areas, you'll be able to come up with, how much is all of that going to cost you. And then next we're talking about who funds in your area of interest, who funds in your geographic region, and who provides the type of support that you need. So that's what we're showing you here. In our search box is, I'll go back to that, is who funds in your area of interest, who provides the type of support that you're looking for, and who funds in your geographic region. So that's what we did there. So I'm going to put that back in there so you can see that. And then when we did a search, we were looking at the K-Fritz Foundation, and when we looked at the tabs across the top, is really helping you to sort out, has the grant maker funded organizations like yours, and how much does the grant maker give to organizations like yours. So we looked at the MAP grants, we looked at the chart grants, and we're looking at search grants to see who funds, how much money have they given to health organizations we put in there in your geographic location, which was DC. So then we get to see, what organizations have they funded like yours and how much have they given to organizations like yours. And so if we sort by grant amount, we can see that from the highest to the lowest amounts that they've given. And what happens is, as you sort through the list, you'll begin to see organizations that are of your size and scope. So, you're not what was at the top of the list. So you're not the Washington Hospital Center, but you may be more like, let's look. You may be more like organizations that fall into the $40,000 or $50,000 category. So it may be that you're more like the Healthy Babies Project. So those are the organizations you'll be able to scan through and say, oh, has the same budget size, the same, focus areas as we do, and you can begin to see what the funding amounts are for organizations like that. And that's really how you know how much a funder will give to specific subject areas, because you can see that as we scroll down the list, we get a lot that are in the $30,000 range, the $10,000 range. See, so how many do we have in the $30,000 range and things like that? Lots of them. 20,000. So we see this foundation gives between like $20,000 and $30,000. I'd say maybe $15,000 to like $30,000 for health organizations in this area, because you can see most of their giving in this particular subject area is that range of amount. So that's how you know if funders will fund organizations like yours of your size and scope. And then we talked also about the last slide in that in part 3 is the initial contact. So I'm going to go back to their profile, and I'm going to show you where the application information is. So we started talking about that already. So what the initial approach is going to be based on what they list here. And you want to pick the most personable one. So telephone call is the one that I would choose when given here. So a lot of times they want the letter of intent, letter of inquiry, or LOI. They mean the same things. It's just that they usually want a 2-page version of your full proposal that you give to them in a letter format. I'll show you where you can find examples of all of this kind of thing in a minute. But that's usually what they want their initial approach to be. A lot of times they do. But I'll say, before you submit anything to a funder, before you call them, before you submit anything in writing, you want to have your full proposal already written. Because, you know, when you make the telephone call, they may ask you specific questions about your goals, your objectives, you know, the cost of the project description, what are you trying to achieve, where's the project going to take place, and you want to have really thought through all of that very thoroughly before you give them a call. Also, you know, when they say, sure, send me something in writing, be it a full proposal or a letter of inquiry or a letter of intent, you want to be able to send that to them immediately after they have received after they've given you the okay. I want to say after you've called them and you've given them the okay, they've given you the okay, then you want to be able to send it right away. You don't want to be sitting around thinking through all this stuff now that you've gotten a response from them. So for various reasons, you want to have your full proposal already written before you submit, before you make the first telephone call or make the initial approach. When you apply, a lot of times they might have their own grant application form. Sometimes they accept what's called the common grant application. That's a common application that many funders in a particular region will accept. It's called the common grant application. And there are regional associations of grant makers who put together a common application that many funders in a particular region will accept. And so, you know, they'll have that common format that you can put it in. So some funders take that, some funders don't. Typically they ask, you know, what applicants should submit. So they say applicants should submit the following. And then, of course, a lot of it's the same, the statement of the project that you'll address, a brief history of the organization and the description of its mission, and some other attachments such as your 990, your annual report, your audited financial statement, and then a detailed description of your project and the amount of the funding request with your project budget and a current general operating budget for the organization as a whole. A lot of times they'll ask for that combination of things even if they don't have a specific format that they want it in. But a lot of times they will these days, and they'll also tell you that when you're doing your research. Any questions on approach or anything like that that I can take now? Any questions about the database or anything like that?
Sure, I'm just looking through the question list now, and so also what are some ways to meet with a potential funder before, you know, do you kind of, who is the key person to look at, the program manager person at there, who the initial contact even, you know, to foster that relationship?
Great question. So here in our database, we have the contact person, which is Roseanne Cleveland, and she's the executive director of one of the largest foundations in Washington, D.C. And that's not the person that you're going to call. Because it looks like that would be the person to call, but absolutely not. Because, what's the chances of you actually talking to her personally? It's very slim. So we just put that person there because that's who you're going to send your proposal to. That's who they say, who should they send their proposal to? And that's who your name you're going to put on the cover letter, for example. But you really want to look at their staff list. And so typically the people that you're going to be building the relationships with are the program officers. They're not the people that actually make the decisions. Typically, they just get all the information together for their grant review committee, for them to make the decisions. But they do the site visits. They make sure that you have everything included. They call you and ask you questions. If there's something that they need clarification on. So typically, it's going to be the program officer that you're building the relationship with. So sometimes if it's a big foundation, it'll have the program officer for health or program officer for the arts or, environment. But those are usually the very large ones, and so many of you probably won't be dealing with those. Mostly you're going to have just, program officer in general. And so I start with just calling one of those people and then say, are you the right person, and is this a good time to talk? And if they're not, they will be quickly say, no, you really need to talk to Karen Kinney, and that's fine too. But I think that if you have the name of somebody to start with, it's easier to find out who the right person is to talk to. Also, it's kind of hard to get a meeting with a funder, without them knowing who you are. So a lot of times, because everybody would want to meet and talk with a funder. So a lot of times, the best way to introduce yourself is to apply for something, to submit a letter of inquiry, for example, if you can't, reach anybody on the telephone. Just submit a letter of inquiry, not the full proposal, but just, get their initial reaction to it. And in that letter, you could say, I'd be happy, I'd love to follow up with you in a couple of weeks to get your impression on this letter of inquiry, to see if this is something you're interested in. So I kind of do that before I say, we're looking for a grant of X amount. I kind of just want to get their feel of the project in general to see if that's something that they would specifically be interested in hearing more about, and that's kind of the starting point with that.
And Kim, we have a few more questions here. For some of the coalitions that are really small and have, operating budgets that are very, very small, how important are the audited financials? They're probably not even in that category. Like, how much financial information do they need to give for grants in the 20K range?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of times they do look for like the financial audit, but they're very expensive. So a lot of people don't have them if you're very small. So my advice would be to just see if they could substitute something else instead. So they just want some kind of objective, I won't say audit, but some objective financial review. That's part of the checks and balances. So sometimes they will accept something less than that from an accountant, or sometimes they'll accept a financial review, which is costs less than an audit, but it's still from an objective point of view. They just really want like an outsider to kind of look and view, your how your finances are being kept and managed, and make sure that there's a lot of integrity in that. But a lot of times people who fund new nonprofits or small nonprofits kind of know that you don't have an audit and will accept something else, but also get their prior approval on that. So it's a good thing to not just leave it out, include everything that they ask for, but find out if they'll accept something other than that. And then when I submit that other thing, I put a little quick note on it that says, per your approval or per our conversation, I'm submitting the attached spreadsheet in lieu of an audit, just so they remember that they've had the conversation with you. and that they're not looking at it like this isn't what we asked for. So, make sure that you clear that up front from the funder.
Terrific, terrific.
And
then
I also want to show, but I wanted to.
Sure. Go ahead. Go ahead. This is a good time to do some demo. Yes.
All right. So just a quick couple of other quick things, and then we can just take questions for the rest of the time. You can also search companies, which just allows you to search either a company by name. So maybe you want to approach Pfizer. Hopefully I spell it right. It's hard. You can put the company name here and do a search, and it'll pull up the company right here, and you click on that, and it'll give you all the information about the corporation, so their subsidiaries and divisions, their corporate officers, their board of directors, and then you can see how you approach this company by clicking the Grant Makers tab, and it'll take you to the grant maker and their foundation. So either the Direct Corporate Giving Program or the foundation or whatever, Patient Assistance Foundation. You click on it, and it'll take you to the Grant Maker tab to see how you approach this particular funder. The same way we saw before. We could see the application information and their fields of interest, their geographic focus, the type of support. You can also do it by, in general, just by you want to see other drug companies besides Pfizer. You can just put that in there, the business type, and do a search on that, and it'll bring up other pharmaceutical companies. Same thing. If you click on it, it will show you how to apply by clicking on the Grant Makers tab. And then under Search Grants, you can just look broadly at, recipient type. So it could be health here, for example, and you can put whatever location you want in here. So we could put, let's see, Florida. I'm just thinking warm thoughts today because it's kind of chilly here in the Washington, D.C. area. But it'll pull up funders who fund in health areas in Florida, for example. And this focuses up more on the recipient than the grant maker. That's the difference between the Grant Maker tab and the Grants tab. And you can click on that, and you can find out more about the grant that was given here. But then you can also focus on the Grant Maker tab, and that'll take you to the funder who funded that particular grant. What I love about this tab is you can also put in a specific name, recipient name. So if you know organizations that are similar to yours that receive funding, you can put that in here and find out who's funding them. Who would that be, Kenny? Do you have one in mind? Hello?
Sorry, Kim, can you repeat that question? I was answering some.
You're probably looking at the question.
Yes.
Coming in. A recipient name, an organization that's similar to yours that receives grant funding.
Well, a lot of the state breastfeeding coalitions, the California Breastfeeding Coalition, the Kentucky Link, or, Lactation Improvement Network of Kentucky, these are all great coalitions that.
Okay, I'll put it here. Hopefully I spelled it right. Yes. Let's see if that's in here. It might be. And if you don't spell it, maybe breastfeeding is probably two separate words, I'm sure. Is that right? So,
sure, or you could do, one of our very good partners is Rose, Reaching Our Sisters Everywhere, ROSE, and you could do that.
Let's see. Yeah. Let's see if they're in it. If not, I won't hold up your time with it, but you get the idea. Yes, so they're in here. So that's how you find out who's funding them, is by typing their name into the recipient name, and then you can find out who's funding them. So if you want to find more about the Kellogg Foundation, you can click on that and then click the Grant Maker tab right there. All right, one more thing I want to show you, and then I want to do all questions. I'm going to grantspace.org because that's our website. We redesigned it so that it looks all pretty, and you can find things related to your subject area. So you could click on health or human services and find out all of the funding resources we have related to that and issues related to that. So funders' tweets, requests for proposals. So a lot of times funders don't put out requests for proposals. It's not like the government. They don't have to, and a lot of times they don't. But if they do, you can find out about them here. Those are requesting specific types of funding opportunities. You can also look in the news. Where can I find funding? Let's see. Where can I find learning and networking opportunities in the human services field? If you click on that, it'll take you to resources related to that too. So lots of good things by subject area. You can also click on more subjects here. Skills are just skills that you're trying to develop. So if you're trying to find out more about proposal writing, you click on developing proposals. We have webinars, podcasts, all kinds of things about how to develop proposals. We have webinars on it. We have in-person classes, and you can find out all of that stuff here under training events. And you can also see, what form that comes in if it's a webinar, for example. I'll show you more about the webinars too, because I know you come from all over the country, right? And then, jobs are also here too. Books that you can find at our libraries and our other funding information network partners. And sample documents is really what I wanted to show you here. So if we go to more under sample documents, you can get sample budgets, sample cover letters, sample letters of inquiry, and sample proposals right here. And those are the ones, they're ones that actually won the grant, and you get the funders' comments on why they liked it. Under Classroom, you can just click on our course list and find out all the courses that we offer, like proposal writing, and this is how you start a nonprofit before you seek a grant, and it'll just show you like the classroom dates and times, the live webinar, and recorded webinars. So a lot of these you can listen to the recorded versions of the webinars as well. So it's just here. You can look at the online classes, the recorded versions, the self-paced versions, and upcoming dates are there, and that's just under Classroom. And course lists. Tools are frequently asked questions, so you can type in here, how do you find a fundraising consultant, for example, in there. But then we also have our top, our top 15 questions that were asked a lot. So how do I find grants for my nonprofit? How do I write a grant proposal? How do I start a nonprofit organization? So if you click on there, it'll give you all the resources you need to know about starting a nonprofit organization, including how to get the IRS's application instructions and 1023, which is the form you have to fill out to do that. One last thing I want to show you before we move on to questions is that where to use our database. All you have to do is type in your zip code here, and we have over 470 locations. So if I put in a zip code right here, it's just at grantspace.org under Find Us. I can go to Go, and it will bring up the locations that are nearest to you where you can use that database that I showed you for free. So here is Cleveland, is my hometown. So if you click on that, it will give you their address, their telephone number, their website, and the hours that they are open, including evenings and weekends. And you can go to use the database for free at any of those locations. So I am going to stop there. I want to take more questions if you have them.
Great. Thank you, Kim. And I know we are almost at time, but we do have a few more questions. And one is, a lot of our coalitions really look to city, state, education development grants, more kind of government grants. And so what are some good ways of, checking on availability of grants which are city, state?
Good way to check for government grants is at grants with an S .gov, grants.gov. And that's how you can find out more about government grants and things like that. I must say that their approach is a lot different than private foundations. Their applications are usually much, more detailed, very long, very strenuous, but that's okay. You're dealing with public money, and so, they have to be more accountable in that way. So that's really the best source for that.
Okay, and one other question is for someone to learn, they're just kind of getting into the grant writing business, and where can they learn more about the common grant application? And so they would be more primed to be able to approach funders.
Yes. I'm going to pull something else up for you real quick. Thanks for asking that. I'm at foundationcenter.org, which is also one of our websites. I'm going to pull that up real quick. This is our, original website, and then people were like, oh, but it's so hard to find things on here, so we just made it a little more user-friendly with GrantSpace. So as you can see, it's a little easier to find things on GrantSpace, but it pulls a lot of the information from here. But this is the easiest way to find the common grant application. A lot of times when I showed you the record or the information about what the funders were looking for, their guidelines and things like that, if they take the common grant application, they'll often have a link to it from their page or from their website. But you can also find it here at foundationcenter.org under Find Funders, Related Tools, Common Grant Applications. So if I click on that, and it's good to just look at them because a lot of times, and they have one for almost every geographic region. So you can see, depending on where you're from, you can click on the one that relates to your specific state. But I'm going to click on the Washington Regional Associations of Grant Makers. And you can see that you can just click on the common grant application from here. So if I click on that, you can see how it looks, how it's laid out. Many of them look about the same way. The thing that I like about the common grant applications, because a lot of the questions that they ask here are the same kind of questions that most funders will ask. So it's good to kind of look over these to see what kind of things they're looking for. They all also have a really good section on budgets, like what's to be included in a budget. If you're describing a particular project, what kinds of things are they looking for, answers to, what kind of attachments would they want. So it's good to kind of look through this. But the good thing about the common grant application is you can literally answer it like it's an application. It doesn't have to be in a narrative format, and you can submit it to as many people as accepted. So you could have the application date, for example, just put the date, organization name and contact information. So, all that stuff, you can just literally put number 1, number 2, number 3, and just answer it just like that. So it's kind of nice, and it's a shame that not all of them accepted. It would make our jobs a whole lot easier, I'm sure.
Thank you, Kim. And we have another question, and this is something that breastfeeding coalitions do a lot of. And can you share ideas for goods and services appropriate for the industry? And often breastfeeding coalitions, the kind of earned income item that they do is they host a conference, they host a lot of teaching sessions for the professional field. So they are the ones that do summits and conferences, and sometimes those are the ones that really, through the registration fees, that's where they get their money. Some have other items like toolkits and things that they have been able to do, but this is a great question to float on our listserv as well, so we can get some feedback from other coalitions about what they really do, what are some of the services that are helpful to them to get some earned income, what kind of products.
Yeah, so you're saying that you're gonna like put that out to your listserv to see what kind of things they do?
Yes, I think this is generating a lot of questions about what could be some sources for earned income. So we just want to continue this conversation with our coalitions and see how we can support them with the resources that you mentioned and also some other ways in which they can collaborate with each other about products and services.
Cool. Let me show you something real quick. You can either do it, here, the best way to do it is search on here on grantspace.org. And if I put in earned income in there, you can put in any subject you want. But earned income, if we click on that, we have a whole, discussion board about earned income. So what it is, some good examples that you can go to. So if I click on that, it will tell you what is earned income and how do I learn more about it. So it talks about the importance of that, what's so good about that. We have links to like things like the Society for Nonprofit Organizations fundraising guide to earned income. So looking at things like that, we even have like an earned income assessment tool to see, if you're ready for an earned income stream. And then we have, lots of conversations and discussions on what it is, how to think through earned income for your own nonprofits. So it's a lot of good resources that you can use on here as well.
Great. And one last question, Kim, because I know we are running out. Do funders give grants to nonprofit organizations only, or do they also give to individuals?
They typically give to nonprofit organizations only. Some will focus on grants to individuals. The database that I showed you was just for nonprofit organizations. We do also have one called Grants to Individuals online, which talks about, how they'll give. So, they usually give to like artists and things like that, writers, filmmakers, for specific projects like a documentary, like an exhibition, things like that. But they also give for like studying abroad, research, going back to school, so scholarships for graduate and undergraduate schools. But typically they don't give money to individuals unless it's connected to a specific goal or outcome.
Okay, great. And then one, I know I keep saying it's one last question, but this one I think would be helpful to a lot of our grant writers here. I recently applied for a small grant and the application asked for grant type. Can you tell me what is meant by this and what an acceptable answer might be? What is a grant type?
Oh, that is what type of support you're looking for. So mostly that's what they mean, like what are you going to use the money for? And so the three main types are general operating support that we talked about earlier to support salaries, your administrative costs, or for a specific program or project, or seed money. There are other different types, but those are the main types. So mainly they just want to know, what's the money going to be used for? I will send you, Kenny.
Okay, I think we've lost Kim again, and since that was kind of our last comment, I will collect all the resources that I can from Kim and from USBC. We'll be sending you an announcement very soon. We will be getting you access and resources for a lot of things that we will be paying for and hoping to have our coalitions access them for free. So stay tuned for an email announcement, exciting email announcement very soon. And also that brings us to the end of today's session. Apologies for the technical glitch, but we will splice it so that you can get the whole recording without the long interval. And thanks for all you do to improve the health of women, children, and families. So goodbye for now, and I look forward to having you all for our next webinar session. Thank you.
Thank you so much.